I'm Bruiser Brad. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Disc Dive, the new series where I visit the entire discography of some of my all-time favorite bands. The goal here is to find hidden gems that may have been lost to time or the radio charts. Now, I'm not going to give you a complete history of the artists. There's plenty of other channels and articles that'll do just that, but I'm going to give you some brief background to give context to each studio release. But before I can do that, we'll have to go back in time. The 80s. What a time to be alive. Disco may be dead, but nightlife is thriving. In the Birmingham dance scene was Duran, a band whose name came from a villain in a late 60s sci-fi comedy. You had lead singer Simon Le Bon, keyboardist Nick Rhodes, and the Three Taylors, John on bass, Andy on guitar, and Roger Taylor on drums. Not to be confused with that other drummer also named Roger Taylor. In '81, they released their self-titled debut. I'm not naming any hidden gems on this one, as the whole album is a bop from start to finish. Seriously, there's no better way to get an idea of what the band was all about in the 80s. Check it out. Still reveling in the success of the debut that took Britain by storm, Duran released Rio only a year later. This brought classics that still receive tons of airplay, such as its title track and Hungry Like the Wolf, but one gem I'd never heard is its closing track, The Chauffeur. I'm quite confident that 90% of indie pop acts from the past 3 decades owe their entire sound to this one song. At this point, Duran was hotter than ever. Too hot. So hot, in fact, that they had to relocate several times to record Seven and the Ragged Tiger, an album whose title comes from the 7 principal talents, the 5 band members, their producer, and their manager, with the tiger in question being the success they continued to court. This one was a bit of a letdown for me, as the only track I remember is one I was already super familiar with, The Reflex. Unfortunately, 2 of the Taylors, Roger and Andy, departed for the next album, Notorious, leaving only Simon, Nick, and John to roll out another mediocre disappointment. No hard feelings, there just weren't any standouts on this one. The same cannot be said for their next release, Big Thing. Aside from some generic dance noise, you have a few fabulous tracks that capitalized on the dance sound of the era, foremost of which was I Don't Want Your Love, a song so catchy it was the catalyst for this video. At the end of the album you have Land, a precursor to some of their later ethereal hits, followed by Edge of America, which starts somber and leads into a bombastic finish that encompasses the overall vibe of the album. At the beginning of the 90s, things were looking grim for our old friends. New Wave was on its way out, and Duran seemed to most to be the fading reminder of a silly fad. Despite providing 2 beautiful gems, Sirius and My Antarctica, Liberty was critically panned and seemed to be the final nail in the coffin. But then, yet another self-titled album marked a point of rejuvenation for the band. They were back, better than ever. They had beaten fatigue and managed to stay relevant once more, at least for now. Now, I've already heard Ordinary World and Come Undone on the radio before, but 2 gems that took my fancy during a full listen of the album were Too Much Information and Breath After Breath, which features some extraordinary guitar work and piano interplay, and some Portuguese language vocals from the great Milton Nascimento. Time. We need to take a detour here. When planning out this video and the series overall, I'd planned to skip over, live albums, compilations, etc., so as to only focus on a band's studio work. While the album Thank You was recorded in the studio, it's a cover album, which I felt wouldn't gel well with the original studio material from the band. However, while in the process of making this, I decided to give it a listen anyway, and I would be doing this album and fans of the band a huge disservice by not talking about it. First off, we have Perfect Day, a pleasant cover of the Lou Reed classic. Then we have probably the vibiest track I've heard in a while, with a cover of Bob Dylan's Lay Lady Lay. Next is Thank You, a Led Zeppelin cover taken to new heights with this version. But the main reason I'm including this is the song Drive By. Now you'd be forgiven in assuming that this song is a cover like the rest of the album, but it's not. I didn't realize it until I looked it up, but this one was actually written by the band, which made a whole lot of sense because it's basically a love letter to everybody who's gone back in time and listened to the whole discography or started with them at the beginning. I won't spoil it, but there's a musical Easter egg that really made me stop and marvel at the craft of the band. And when you hear it, maybe you will too. In typical Taylor fashion, it was only a matter of time. Bassist John Taylor exited the band during the recording of Medazzaland, Duran Duran's final entry of the 90s. Only 4 songs feature his bass tracks. A nice little gem here is Midnight Sun. Duran Duran entered the new millennium in a big way with pop trash. Don't let the name fool you. The quality and bombastic nature of some of these tracks lend themselves better to a film than a studio album. Very early on we have our gems, Someone Else Not Me and Playing With Uranium. 5 years later, the unthinkable happened. All 5 members of Duran Duran reunited for the first time since the recording of A View to a Kill in 1985. The only project this reunited lineup could squeeze out was Astronaut. I really wish there was something else memorable about the album. This one took a couple listens to really appreciate. While there's some excellent vocal passages and some interesting guitar work, a lot of it's held back by a dated aesthetic. On top of the stale electronic drums that dotted the decade, you had some downright ugly synth voices that did not fit the tone of the album at all. Falling Down is noteworthy on its own, but She's Too Much was so close to being a hit that it hurts. If they were to re-release that one with the new drums and maybe some new synth voicings, it could chart easily. Cry Baby Cry brings it back with a tastefully arranged dance hit. Now we're talking. Andy may have left following Astronaut, but this is the first time in a while that Duran Duran actually sounds like how we remember them. All You Need Is Now highlights how the band has matured artistically, while Girl Panic sounds like it was ripped straight out of an 80s recording session. Settling into the 2010s with Paper Gods, the band seemingly learned from their mistakes by not straying too far away from their artistry while also not being afraid to experiment. This is such a rich release filled with dance hall bangers that it was hard to narrow it down to just 3 gems. You Kill Me With Silence, What Are the Chances, and Only in Dreams. What could Duran Duran possibly whip up next? Invisible, the lead single off of Future Past, is what drove me to dive into their discography, hoping to feel a little bit of that enjoyment from this somber yet groovy track. I must also give attention to Anniversary, a bombastic 80s dance hit, and Hammerhead, which may feature one of the grooviest bass lines since Rio. Ooh, spooky. Just in time for Halloween. 2023 saw the release of Dance Macabre, a curated selection of some reimagined songs, some covers, and 3 new originals. While the band's artistry is mostly on point here, please do everything you can to avoid their cover of Painted Black. It's a travesty. That said, Black Moonlight, a fresh new song with the guitar talent of Nile Rodgers, and Super Lonely Freak, a clever amalgam of familiar tunes, are definitely both worth a listen. Plus, the covers of Spellbound and Psycho Killer are tons of fun. But wait, that's not all. Just last year, they released a deluxe version of the album. This one features 3 additional tracks, and I would highly recommend seeking out this version, as it just adds to an already great album. I keep a catalog of Halloween-adjacent albums that I like to listen to yearly as soon as October rolls around, and this was an easy add to the rotation. Duran Duran is often thought of as a fun 80s new wave band, and while they arguably had the most mainstream success in that decade, they continue to release quality music to this day. Their versatility in style and tone, Rhodes' ongoing experimentation in soundscapes, and LeBon's voice that never seems to age are just some of the reasons I keep coming back to their music. Here's a final list of all the songs I've mentioned. I've made a playlist of these that will remain public until the next installment of this series, so that you can more easily access them and maybe choose some of your favorites. Thank you for checking out Disc Dive. I put a little more effort into this series and I hope it shows. Stay tuned for future videos and let me know down in the comments which Duran Duran songs are your favorites. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I'm Bruiser Brad.